This movie, Death Sentence, starts with Nick Hume, who is a hardworking businessman who leads a quiet suburban life with his wife, Helen, and their two sons, Brendan and Lucas. The Hume family is loving and close-knit despite occasional sibling squabbles between the boys. Brendan is the star of his school's hockey team, and Lucas, though younger and less outgoing, looks up to him. On one particular evening, Nick attends one of Brendan's hockey games while Helen and Lucas stay home. After the match, Nick and Brendan drive back together, enjoying their time alone. During the ride, Brendan reveals he is considering moving to Canada for college to pursue a professional hockey career. Nick is bittersweet about the news. He would miss his son deeply, but he supports his ambitions wholeheartedly. Their conversation is lighthearted, and they focus on directions home as Nick searches for the expressway. Late into the night, Nick notices two cars pass by with their headlights off, but he dismisses it and focuses on finding a gas station when his car suddenly runs out of fuel. They pull over, and Brendan offers to grab snacks while Nick fills the tank. Moments later, the same cars pull into the station, and several masked men storm the store, demanding money. Brendan, caught off guard and frozen in fear, is trapped inside. Nick hears a gunshot while outside, but is struck by a car when he rushes toward the store. Inside, the robbery spirals out of control. The cashier is shot trying to grab a gun, and one of the masked assailants, encouraged by his partner, violently slashes Brendan's throat with a machete, killing him instantly. The robbers flee, but one lags behind. Nick manages to tackle this straggler, unmasking him long enough to see his face. The killer escapes, but is struck by a car outside as Nick scrambles to hold his dying son. Nick gets Brendan to the hospital, but despite doctors rushing him into surgery, Brendan does not survive. Helen and Lucas arrive shortly after, and the family is devastated, clinging to each other in disbelief. Days later, Nick is brought to a police lineup to identify his son's killer. He immediately recognizes Joe Darley, a teenage gang member. The Humes bury Brendan, grief-stricken, while Lucas mourns alone in his brother's room, clutching a photo of them together. Nick seeks justice through the legal system, but his lawyer informs him that without witnesses, a murder weapon, or surveillance footage, since the gas station cameras were disabled, the prosecution will struggle. They propose a plea deal that could see Joe serving minimal time. Nick is horrified when he learns Brendan's murder was a gang initiation, making his son's death feel meaningless. At Joe's trial, Nick is filled with rage as Joe smirks and mocks him. In a shocking move, Nick retracts his identification, claiming he couldn't clearly see the attacker. Joe is released, celebrating with his gang as if victorious. Fueled by grief and disgust, Nick begins surveilling Joe's gang, driving through their neighborhood and preparing himself mentally for retribution. He retrieves an old knife from his shed and wraps it carefully. Later, Nick spots Joe alone outside his gang's hideout. He approaches Joe, who recognizes him too late. A violent struggle ensues. Joe briefly gains control of Nick's knife, but is ultimately stabbed and killed. Nick flees, wiping his prints from the weapon before discarding it in a nearby river. At home, Helen is concerned by Nick's disheveled state, but he claims he slipped and fell. In private, he breaks down in the shower, apologizing to his late son for failing him. Meanwhile, the gang leader Billy, Joe's older brother, learns of Joe's death. Billy works under a crime boss named Bones and vows revenge. His gang canvasses the streets for leads. A tip from a gang member's sister confirms that Joe's killer was a man in a suit, leading Billy to suspect Nick. Soon after, Nick is confronted by a detective at his workplace who informs him of Joe's murder. While Nick feigns ignorance, Billy and his crew begin tailing him. One evening, they attempt to kill him in a dramatic car chase and shoot out through city alleys and a multi-level parking garage. Nick narrowly survives, ambushing and killing one attacker in a harrowing struggle that ends with a car plunging off the roof. Traumatized, Nick flees and calls Helen, only to learn Lucas is missing. He finds his younger son at the gas station where Brendan was killed, consumed with guilt for surviving. Nick consoles him and brings him home, but Billy, having stolen Nick's wallet, now knows his family's identity. The gang escalates their threats. A member named Bodie delivers a package to Nick at his office containing family photos and a phone number. When Nick calls, Billy answers, vowing revenge for Joe's death. Nick alerts Helen and calls the police, prompting Detective Wallace to station officers outside their home. Helen is horrified to learn Nick killed Joe, realizing his act of vengeance has triggered a gang war. Nick admits he wanted justice, unable to accept Brendan's senseless murder. Helen assures him she still loves him, though fear looms over their family. That night, Billy's gang executes their plan. They kill the 2 officers stationed outside, storm the house, and brutally subdue Nick. Helen and Lucas are dragged downstairs, and Nick watches helplessly as Billy shoots Helen and Lucas before Nick is shot himself. He awakens in a hospital, disoriented and screaming for his family, believing them dead. Detective Wallace informs him that Lucas survived but remains in a coma. Overcome with guilt, Nick visits his son's hospital room, confessing his regrets and love, promising he means everything to him. Resolved to end the violence, Nick disappears from the hospital, gathering money and information. He contacts an acquaintance to trace Billy's location, then seeks out Bones, offering cash to purchase weapons. Bones, indifferent to Billy's fate despite being his father, sells Nick an arsenal. Nick shaves his head, arms himself, and tracks Billy's crew. After interrogating and killing one gang member, Nick calls Billy during the murder to taunt him. Billy, frustrated, shoots Bones in a fit of rage and takes control of his father's car and resources. Nick infiltrates the gang's hideout, crashing through their gates in a stolen vehicle. A brutal gunfight erupts as Nick takes out multiple gang members in the darkened warehouse. Billy and Bodie join the hunt, but Nick proves relentless, killing Bodie and maiming Billy in a final showdown. Both men, wounded and exhausted, sit across from each other. Billy bitterly tells Nick that he has become one of them. Nick calmly asks if Billy is ready to meet his maker, then kills him. Fatally wounded, Nick drives Billy's car home and collapses on his couch, watching old videos of his happy family. Police surround his house, and Detective Wallace enters, revealing Lucas will survive. Nick, relieved, takes his final breath while gazing at memories of the life he fought so hard to protect. And movie concludes.